and talks about his father sacrificing a fowl cock to Kali because he was frightened of them, and he sees as a kind of backward remnant of this irrational Indian culture. But in effect, what I realized is that it's not simply a nostalgia, it's not a reminder of going back. The homecoming is right there in the temple itself, or even in its going forward. And what's been interesting since I made the original film in the 80s was that because of the collapsing nation-state, many of them in Guyana, it was basically a fragmented post-colonial nation-state, many of them have emigrated to the islands and also to North America, to Brooklyn, to Toronto, and to Florida. And I kept in touch with some of them, and I realized they had a temple in Brooklyn, which to me was, I thought, this is like globalization is going to be totally ruined. So I was probably more tropical. I had a tropical nostalgia that they themselves did not have, that they were able to negotiate themselves into the center of global modernity. I'm taking this example because I've given all these other examples, which are very much avant-garde examples of like Brazilian anthropophagismo or Cuban transculturación and high literature. But I think this cosmopolitanism also happens on the grassroots level. And when I found them 15 years later, and in fact it was many people of the same community in the same temple, which I met, and they were finding their little spaces. They were getting rich in New York, but finding little spaces either in a garage, they moved from a garage to a basement, then they moved to a warehouse. And when I met up with them, they were in a warehouse, in fact opposite McDonald's in Brooklyn. And I went there on a freezing cold winter's day in this kind of run-down red brick house, just in the neighborhood, and I thought, well, what self-respecting goddess is going to find a home in this space? But what was exciting about it was, even though there was negotiation, there was a whole process of give and take, and there wasn't only a kind of metaphysical dimension. But, there was also negotiation with local lawyers and so forth to find their way on how to practice this religion within New York. And in a sense more interesting than other forms of, say, Hinduism that I've found in Guyana and the Caribbean is the fact that they are also marginalized within the Hindus, because they are the most low caste and the most liminal. I haven't got time to show you the Brooklyn, but what I found quite curious, and I was excited about it, was when they had the big puja and they were all in trance and getting whiplash and putting fire in their mouth. At the door of this open warehouse, there were people across the road buying hamburgers from McDonald's and sort of looking over at what's going on, and they were, whereas the Indian group were like totally okay and confident about what they were doing. The other change was that whereas the group in Guyana were probably mainly of primary education, semi-literate, it also brought a new kind of diasporic contact, say, with Indians from the subcontinent. So whereas they'd forgotten Tamil or Hindi, they were beginning to learn it. And also US-born Indo-Caribbeans were now well-educated university students were also participating in this, and even going into trance themselves. The piece, when I say what interested me was translating its language itself, was seeing the ritual as writing. So it was a kind of analogy between write and write, with and without a W. And what are the boundaries that were crossed? And what were the transformations with that crossing? What was allowed, what was not allowed? When could you enter? Where could you not enter? So, and this point that I'm going to show you, and I probably should stop there so we can have some discussion. I've gone on longer than I sorry. But I'll show you a few minutes of this clip, is the beginning of Big Puja on a sugar plantation in Guyana, in which the devotees, you'll see all men. The women always ask you, why are there all men here? But there are women, but they're not in this scene. They have a different role, and they come into it later. But in this particular part, it's the bringing of the goddess from the waterside, where they go out, they invoke her. She takes possession of the devotees that have cleansed themselves in order to be entered by her, and they take her into the temple as she dances for healing purposes. I said it's a healing ritual. And when they do that, they cross a boundary. And you'll see one of the first scenes I'm showing. I'm sorry about the animal sacrifice, which my Paul despised, but you'll see a man with a cutlass cutting the head of a fowl cock, throwing a lemon in 4 directions to clear the road, the crossing, the border crossing. And at that cutting of the head, then they enter into the boundary of the temple. And they take the oath of fire, and then they give a message, which is a message of peace, as we'll see. And maybe I'll just show you that, and we'll end with that. So I just press the top, all right? Is that covered?
No, with the mouse, press play.
I just press play with the mouse.
The